Board of Education combined work session and regular meeting for December 7th, 2017. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. Members of the public who desire to address the board on any topic related to board work must sign the roster in the back of the room before 6:15 p.m. We are absent our secretary in advance of our election, which is item number 2.2. So I am going to call the roll tonight. So I will call the roll, and I will not call it in alphabetical order, which I know is in violation of CRS something, but that's okay. Mrs. Torres.
Here.
Mrs. Zorosco.
Here.
Ms. Gonzalez. Here. Mrs. Pugh.
Here.
Mr. Siebert.
Here.
So we have all 5 in attendance tonight. We also are favored with the attendance of former board member Doreen Longmire. Thank you very much. We're very sad to say former board member. 5 present, and then we also have Roland, who is here representing, and Naija is not here tonight. She has a choir meeting. Yes. Okay. So have you all had an opportunity to review tonight's agenda? Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as stated. So moved by Mrs. Pugh, seconded by Mr. Siebert. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we're moving on to item 2.2, election of board officers. So we will take a 10-minute recess so that we can, the 5 of us can go behind the scenes and do our election of officers, and we will be back. So it is now 6:05. We will be back at 6:15 with announcement of our new officer roles. So. back into session, and I want to announce the results of our officer elections. So the results of our officer elections is that our new school board president is Mr. Steven Siebert. And our vice president is Yesenia Torres. And secretary is Linda Pugh. And our treasurer is Gina Rosa. And just to explain a little bit of background for you all, I have, for me, an unfortunate announcement. I'm going to be resigning the board, effective in February. As you all know, I got engaged and getting married, and I'm moving out of the district. And I'm very sad about that, and it's very unfortunate. And I'm second guessing myself every day as I move forward. But faced with the election of new officers, I felt like it was important for a transition period. And so I'm very excited for Steve to take on this new role. And so I'm going to hand off. No. You are now the president, so I will assist you in any way that I need to.
Well, I know that you will not be abashed of jumping in.
No, I'm not. But it has been an honor to serve as president for the last couple of years. More than an honor. It's been a privilege of my life to serve as president of the school district for the last couple of years. And I'm so proud of everything that you all have done. And I'm very, very excited about the future of the district. Even though I will not be living in the district anymore, don't think you've seen the last of me, because I will certainly be involved. Still working downtown and still being involved in a lot of issues that are discussed. But I will be living in Falcon, which makes me sort of weirdly sad. And it's like kind of a long drive every day, but what we do for love. So, President Siebert, please take it away.
Well, this is not something that I had anticipated.
There you go.
This is not something that I anticipated until.
But it's just because it's active, it's actually going. So join me.
Hello.
Is it turn on?
Until very recent developments. So we will certainly miss Eileen, and I have very large shoes to fill, so to speak, in the position. Eileen's quite suited for everything that we've called her to do, and we've been very, very proud to serve on a board with her as president, and she'll certainly be missed. With that, let's move right along. I don't need to read the rules. For public comment, Mrs. Longmire, would you like to?
First of all, hold on, there you go. There's
Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you, Eileen, for your service. It has been a pleasure working with you on the board for the district, and I know that you're going to be fabulous wherever else you go. So thank you so much for your service and for all that you've done and will continue to do for this community. We appreciate you for that, and we wish you well. Congratulations on everything. So yes. And the next thing is congratulations to all the new officers on the board. And I'm confident in all of you to do a wonderful job. And I know that if you have questions of anybody, that you just reach out, to whoever's here. You reach out and you'll get the answers. So I know that that's the case. I'm here tonight, though, for the purpose of sharing with you all, since I have departed the board as well. The balance that was left in my board account for travel, I was not able to use a lot of it for certain trips that we went on. I was not able to go on during the years. And so I wanted to dedicate that to something that had to do with district programs or something like that. And so Yesenia, you were asking about the GT Pathway Scholar Program for tutoring. That's where the balance of that went. So they will have several hours of tutoring that will be paid for through that. And so that I wanted to make sure that that was announced to you all, because you wouldn't have, you may not have known otherwise. But and I want to thank Norma, Andre, and Lori for making that. Yes, absolutely, for making that happen. So I appreciate that. And I was being a pest. I know, Norma, I'm sorry. No, I was, because I know that the timing was terrible, because it was like right before holiday break. And I was like, I know this is not a priority right now, but we got to get it done. We had a date, a deadline to meet, which was the 1st of December, and we made it. So thankfully that's happening now. So I just want to thank you all. And Andre, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure working with you as well. And Norma, and I just want to say it's been a great team. I miss my board family already. You will not see me at every meeting. so don't get all worried and think, oh, she's going to be a little watchdog watching every little movie. I'm not like that. I trust that you're going to do an outstanding job. However, I do still live in the community. So if I hear something crazy, I'm coming. So with that, I just want to say thank you all to the cabinet and everyone else that's present tonight. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and so please continue.
Thank you, Dorina. Moving on, item 4.1, we have Mr. Amos and his report.
Hi, everyone. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. So, not that much has happened. I don't know. Now, I missed school for about 2 weeks because I was in the hospital.
Please tell.
Okay, so I didn't want to get sad, but I guess I have to get sad. So, this is kind of weird to say. So, over in the end of October, middle of October, near the end of October, I attempted suicide. So I had to go to the hospital. And then got out of the hospital. I was okay, sort of. So this is the other sad part. My mom felt like I should be kind of taken out of some things for right now. So she's advising that I go to a different school. And so that's happening, which is horrible because then I won't be able to come here. So I'm really sad. I don't want to cry because I cried before I came and I really don't want to cry again. So that's happening, but I've been able to catch up as far as everything on my grades and everything like that because I was gone for so long, except math, because math is my worst enemy. And as soon as I graduate, I'm not even adding anything anymore. I'm done with math. I'm done with it. But I'm going to Denver tomorrow for NHS because we have to help there's a thing that we're doing. We're helping some people. I don't remember what it is. I didn't read the field trip form. I just filled it out and turned it in. So I'll be gone tomorrow. I'm excited about that. We got our shirts for leadership, which I'm really excited, even though it's my last week. But yeah.
How did you feel about CASB?
Oh yeah. Okay. That was absolutely amazing. It was really fun. The the two speakers that I did hear were amazing, really motivational, and they made me want. I don't remember one of the ladies' names, but it was the second speaker, and she pretty much justified not paying attention in class. So I loved her because sometimes I don't pay attention in class. But yeah, so that happened. I really liked a lot of the booths that they had and things like that. It was really interesting, and everyone was so welcoming and answered any question I had. And I always have a lot of questions. I made a friend from Aspen.
Yes.
Aspen.
Another student?
Yes, another student.
Good.
I don't an Aspen school. It was Aspen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was fun. I did have a great time.
Good. Well, thank you for being there. I appreciate you guys.
Of course.
Well, and those experiences are great. You'll make connections at those conferences that'll carry on. We're very happy to have you as a rep on the board. Your personality is fantastic. We chose you head and shoulders above everyone else. So no matter what happens, we've enjoyed the time or continued time if it works out. But certainly our hearts and prayers are with you for wherever your path may end up.
Oh,
Okay.
speak up.
Moving on. 5.0 matters reserved for board action. We have our comprehensive annual financial report.
Woohoo!
Yay, everyone's favorite topic, finances. I know that there'll be going on. I should maybe say that.
No.
As former treasurer, I'm the one who would go 70 pages and try to do it in the early morning when I have coffee that I can continue through. But Shelley Becker.
Absolutely, thank you. Excited tonight to have. Okay, how's that? Great, excellent, thank you. We're excited tonight to have Tom Sester, our audit partner with Holtley & Company, here to present the fiscal year 2016-2017 comprehensive annual financial report. And please feel free to ask any questions or that you may have of him. So we're excited to have him here tonight. Also, we have Scott Howard and Lori Hawkins, our accounting manager. And I would not be remiss to thank my team for all their hard work and as we've gone through the past several months. So this is a big culmination, a big woohoo celebration for us. So we're excited to come before you tonight.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. I passed out just a 2-page handout. That's just a summary of my presentation that you can follow along with, rather than digging through all 100+ pages of the CAFR here. But of course, happy to answer any questions you might have in detail there. Well, first of all, we were on site for about 3 days over the summer, reviewing and testing internal controls. Then we designed our audit plan based on the results of those tests, and we performed our field work in late August. Overall, we found that the financial condition of the district is strong, and the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. So as a result of our audit, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion. Number 2, looking at the government-wide versus fund statements. This is something, comparison that I do for you every year.
Can I interrupt you just a minute?
Of course.
Apparently, I have a copy somewhere, and I don't know where it is, and I'm trying to find the copy of the report. So if you're referencing something, I don't know where these boxes are.
Oh, here. Okay.
We all have one. Okay. I'm sorry, I just didn't know where to look for it. No problem. Sorry.
So each year I talk about the distinction between the government-wide and fund statements, and it's particularly important with some of the new standards that have come out, so you can see what you're judging between the two. The fund statements reflect how the district keeps its books on a day-to-day basis. You will see that your adopted budgets and monthly financial reports are on the fund basis. The government-wide financial statements, however, combine all the funds into a single presentation and are presented on the accrual basis. The government-wide statements include capital assets, include debt, as well as all other long-term liabilities that are not included in the fund financial statements. So the first numbers that I'm presenting here is the statement of net position. And it's a government-wide financial statement. Essentially, it's the balance sheet for the district. And I'm going to cover a couple of highlights here. Unrestricted assets were up about 0.9%. It's made up of cash and cash equivalents being up about $1.5 million, and receivables being down almost the same, $1.1 million. The big change is liabilities were up $172 million. Most of that increase, $176 million, is due to your portion of the net pension liability for para. So para this year went up. The total para unfunded or not, the net pension liability went up $14.5 billion. All right. And that was due mainly to changes in actuarial assumptions. And an example of that would be their return on investment went from 7.5% on their assets down to about 5.25%. So making for a sizable change in the net pension liability. So
If I could stop you right there, talk to us about the long-term effect of that, not just tonight. Is this going to be a reoccurring amount liability, or is this a one-time change? How does that forecast?
It is hard to tell is the unfortunate answer, because I would expect that, for the first year when everything was implemented, let's put it this way, the first year GASB 68 went into effect 2 or 3 years ago. I think 3 years ago. This is the third year. The total net pension liability was about $13.5 billion. And this year it went up $14.5 billion. So to be able to track that reasonably, I wish I could tell you. And I think they tightened things up this year because they felt as though a 7.5% rate of a return was maybe not as reasonable as they had thought 3 years ago. So I wish I had a better answer. And those actuaries are pretty smart, but it seems like a big change. It's a large change. Now, the bottom line number is you are responsible for paying your contributions based on the statutorily determined contribution rate. So that is your cost per year, and nobody's coming knocking at your door looking for this. $417 million that is booked for your net pension liability. Looking at net position is your equity. We see in net investment in capital assets increased about $2.3 million. And that's primarily related to a $3 million decrease in debt. That decrease was related to just paying your debt as according to the debt service schedules. And finally, restricted net position decreased about $79,000, just related to reduced TABOR reserve requirements. Getting a little more relevant, I think, as we look at number 4, the general fund. Obviously, it's your main operating fund. And we show a ratio here of your unassigned fund balance plus operating reserves to expenditures. And that ratio, you would cover about 92 days of operations with your existing balances. So that really you really sit at a good position comparable to the prior year and other years, but I think a strong position to be at for a school district without being overly heavy cash reserves, if you will, or reserves, if you will. Number 5, long-term debt. I touched on that already. General obligation bonds sit at about $36 million. Decreases based on paying per the schedules there. Number 6, changes in fund balances. Again, this is all looking at the fund presentation, and this schedule mirrors a schedule that, as part of your pipeline part of your transmission to CDE, this appears in the I think the very last page of your financial statements. I'll highlight a couple of things here. We see that overall general fund balance is up. It's made revenues being up about $1.5 million. It's made up of about $160,000 in local revenues, state revenues being up about $1.3 million, and federal revenues being about the same. Expenditures overall were down about $350,000. So we see a net increase in fund balance of about $1.6 million. Food service fund balance was up $738,000, with revenue up $264,000, and expenditures down almost $200,000. Building and capital project funds were down $511,000 in total. There were lower transfers into the building funds this year, which makes a difference. Less transfers for capital projects. Also closed out the building fund in 16-17. Yes. And then finally, the health fund was down about 580,000. Premiums up were up about 212, while claims were also up about 112. And that fund tends to be one that fluctuates quite a bit, depending on the major activities of usually just a handful of staff, but you have one transplant and, well, it gets expensive. Internal control. So a large portion of our work is looking at and testing internal controls. We report on internal controls in the governmental section of the audit, which is towards the end, with the as part of the single audit, reporting on grants and overall controls of the district. And we had a few internal controls that we have reported in there this year. I would say that all of them or most of them are related to a significant turnover in finance staff right at the end of the year. So I think everything I describe here or touch on here is really related to that. Wouldn't you agree, Shelley? So we had a comment on recording grant activity. A bit of that we were assisting with when we were on site for the audit. Some segregation of duties issues because we didn't have the usual staff in place to have the proper separation there. Some capital asset ledger and recording capital assets. Really that seemed to be a training issue that I think Shelley is aware of now. And then finally, timely closing procedures, which again, with the staff turnover was a challenge. Another big part of our audit is federal awards. This year, Title I was the major program that we tested this year. We issued, again, an unmodified or clean opinion on federal awards as well. We did have one compliance finding related to documentation of employee time and effort. And this is not technically, this is not a payroll issue. This is a compliance, a documentation and compliance that the feds require for Title I and some other grants there. So this was something that with the departure of one of the grant folks, it just didn't get continued. The district finance staff and grant folks are aware of that now, and that's going to be back on track, is back on track this fall, I believe. Again, just to wrap up, really appreciate the hard work of Shelley and her staff. It was we expected last year would be a challenging year with Shelley's transition in, and it went fairly smoothly. This was the challenging year with a lot of the staff turning over. So it looks like there's some, in order to get the audit done and everything transmitted to CDE, the CAFR prepared, and all that, it takes some good people spending a lot of time doing it. And so I don't think that could have been accomplished if Shelley and her staff weren't able to bring in some good people to fill those shoes. And that did happen this fall. And I'm very pleased that the audit was done. After all that, the audit's done before the end of December. So we are done.
Woohoo!
Yay.
Any questions for me at all?
I don't have any specific questions.
I should pass out food at these things. That would
get the question. So staff turnovers, and the audit was done in August. What time frame and as far as those positions, and Shelley, you may be better able to answer that.
Oh, as far
as the positions, yeah, are all the positions, did that happen in August or was that more recent?
Probably in May and June. May and June, and our new hires started at the end of July. And our audit started in May. So it was really a time.
Right, exactly at that time. So staff is pretty stable and everybody's getting back into the groove. Great. Jeannie? Okay. Eileen? No? Well, it's always nice to hear that we have a clean audit. A few things to look at for next year. One of the things that the board has changed, and this will affect the Holton Group. We had every 3 years we were going to RFP. We've changed that to every 5 years now, and so I don't know what we need to do to look at extending the contract, but we'll go to that 5-year for our auditor. That's a complete aside from this, but just while you're here and face to face, I'd like to tell you that.
Yep, you bet.
So we can
And that's
work
certainly
out
easy enough for us to
just move from 3 to 5, and
absolutely.
we're very happy with that. We've been very pleased, and I sat in on the RFP very arduously, may I say, for hours.
Every
and
5 years
hours
is enough. Is that
a day? Yes, we're quite comfortable. So very happy to have you as our auditor.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
Any other comments or no? Well, we can move on to 5.2. Again,
Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Great,
An
appreciate
update,
it.
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
just move
We're just
over
going
to
to keep on going down
keep
the
going.
line.
Next, refunding of the bond. Shelley Becker, our CFO.
Great. Thank you. I have David Bell is here with us again tonight to just give a quick recap on the refunding of our bonds. He's brought some handouts there to provide you with some information. So I'm going to let him give you an update. Feel free to ask any questions.
Good evening. Nice to see you
Good
guys
evening.
again, and welcome to the new board members. It's a pleasure.
No entourage tonight with.
No, I gave him the night to go home, and so it's just me. So once in a while you have to, I guess, do that. So I have, this was really good news about your auditor, by the way. I have even better news. This is good stuff.
I'm not giving you money.
So as you guys know from the last time I was here, we had planned on going out into the marketplace to sell your refunding bonds to pay off the 2007 securities. We did that middle of November and closed last week, Thursday, I think, right? The 30th, whenever that was. I think that was last Thursday. And so just to sort of give you the highlights of all of this, we got the market in a very good place. The district was well received in the marketplace. This has been a little bit of a hectic time. We've got a lot of bond issues statewide and in our country that are coming to market before the end of the year because of impending new tax legislation that's going to impact pretty significantly the bond business. So as an aside, we just did the University of Colorado transaction. It was nearly $500 million of refunding money because they won't be able to do this after December 31st. So that as an aside, there was a lot of business, a lot of volume. This district was very well received in the marketplace. Took us a couple hours to get this done. We saved $2,500,326. And since your CFO was pushing very diligently to get to $2.5 million, I just wanted to note that we made it by $326. So thank you very much. She spent the whole morning with us, making sure we knew that $2.5 million was the threshold. So we did that, and it was all good stuff. On average, the district is going to save between now and 2026 about $277,000 to its taxpayers. There will be, and I know Shelley will be talking about your mill levy certification here pretty quick. So this is really good news for the folks that live in this district. They're gonna get some savings, about $3 per year per $100,000 of home value, just because we did this. So all good news. Interest rate savings was nearly 3% between the 07 bonds and these bonds. There was no extension of maturities. It was straight savings. As you can see sort of in the lower right on page 2, that's the dollar amounts, true dollar amounts of money that we're going to save to the taxpayers over the next 9 years. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And we were thrilled to be a part of it, and we appreciate it very much.
Well, it
Question?
seems like it went very smooth. Thank you for all of your effort and maybe some mojo in the selling of bonds. I know that it can go very well or it could go not so well sometimes. And certainly who's looking at purchasing out there, and certainly a confidence in who purchased, not typical school district.
I think we got a real
purchasers.
balanced distribution of bonds between investors, a number of folks that jumped in, and it was nice to have Shelley there for the morning. She and I've done this before, and so I guess I'd let you speak to what you thought the job that we did, but I was very pleased with the way it went completely. So thanks again.
Yeah.
Awesome. And always, for the public, saving money is saving money. Anytime we can reduce that liability, something we could hang our hat on. It's always easier to give back than it is to take, as we know that, as a business of pennies, is it, $3 on per 100,000. A lot of people may say that, well, that's not very much, but when we ask for that $3 per 100,000, it's a whole nother story. So we have well, maybe a better story to follow the next year with. That.
I do have some questions about the changing landscape that we've got here. I know at the city, we're rushing through some private activity bonds here over the next month because they do need to be completed now with the changing story at the federal level on those. So we're rushing some things through in December so they can be done by the end of the year. We are considering asking the voters for a bond issue in November. What can we anticipate about the bond market changing in November versus now? Is there anything that we need to be cognizant of as we go out, potentially, if the voters approve it, go out next year in terms of what we can expect in the bond market?
Sure. So at the moment, just to give you a bit of an update, the House and the Senate have both passed different versions of tax reform. The municipal bond component of that is not the same. And so what they're doing is there's a group of negotiators that are negotiating between the Senate version and the House version to try to come to some conclusion. I think they're making really good progress. And so here's what I think is going to good, but not in a good way for guys like me. I'll get to that in a second. So really the things that are going to be mostly impacted is advance refundings. This transaction was a current refunding where we basically paid your existing bonds off on the same day we closed. There will be no prohibition against doing this kind of thing, but had we refunded these bonds and had to put money aside for longer than 90 days, that would have constituted an advance refunding. The federal government believes that essentially puts two sets of securities outstanding. They don't want holders of municipal bonds to have too many of them because that's tax advantage, right? So that is almost certainly going to be eliminated. There will be no more advance refundings of municipal bonds. The sad part of that is that as people can save money like you just did, the federal government is not allowing tax exempt bonds to be issued to save taxpayer money. It's too bad. On the private activity bond front, there is great disparity between the House and the Senate version, and they're trying to work through that. Private activity bonds, healthcare, higher education, housing bonds, COPs, I don't think COPs are going to be impacted, but your COP issue is an advance refunding. That's why you're going quickly on that one. But things like Regis universities, nonprofit corporations would have a hard time borrowing on a tax exempt basis if this all goes the way. I think there will be some compromise for private activity bonds, but I don't exactly know what it is yet. I'm going to have an answer to this in the next. The advance refundings are for all practical purposes after December 31st are dead. And so I'm aware of the COP that you're working on, and you better hurry because if it's not done by December 31st, your opportunity is over to save some money. I mean, so that's kind of the landscape. Now, if you decide to have an election in the fall of 18, the good news is I think this is going to cut municipal supply of bonds by anywhere from 30 to 40%. It'll also change people's appetites for municipal debt because all of the tax brackets are going to go down, particularly corporate tax brackets. So I think there's going to be an adjustment period. The good news here is that people are still going to need to borrow money, including potentially you. I think there will be an orderly market for it, for general obligation kind of new money projects. I think will be fine. But I think there's going to be a transition here first 3 to 6 months just to figure out what the tax code actually means. I like the healthcare thing that happened a few. I think January might be an interesting time. But you know what? It is what it is. Anytime that there's an attempt at the federal level to lower tax rates, which is what's happening here, then there's a corresponding increase in lack of deductibility kinds of things. And municipal bonds are essentially tax deductions. And so they're trying to limit those kinds of things. I think it's a bit unfortunate that we might see hospitals, airports, healthcare facilities, nursing homes that really benefit from tax exempt bonds that are potentially on the endangered species list for borrowing costs. But that's probably more of a personal commentary. So that's kind of where we're at. I think that by the time you get to a place where you'd be issuing debt again, potentially in late, 2018, I think the marketplace will be defined. It'll be fine. It'll be orderly.
And certainly as the prospect and consumer confidence in that as well, we'll see how that plays with the public at large. Anything further? Shelley, do you have
any questions for me?
To add? Any other questions for David? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Board docs. Yes, thank you, Norma. David, thank you again. Appreciate the good message that we could take to our taxpayers. Moving on to 5.3 again, Shelley.
Great.
Certifying our mill levy.
Exactly. I think if Norma's able to pull up the PowerPoint presentation. Oh, I'm sorry. It's still.
Oh, we have it. Hold
I-
on.
I have a hard copy and I know you have it in Board Docs, so just
We
thought it
do
might be
have it.
helpful I apologize. I don't have copies for everybody else.
Pull it up.
Okay.
Got it.
Everybody?
Yeah, you've got it.
Jeannie, okay.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to go right to slide number 2 after our title slide. So legal compliance. Every year, school districts are mandated, required by law to certify their mill levies to their local county commissioners by December 15th. And the mill levy is based upon the assessed valuation information that is provided to us in late November. So for all school districts, it's really this tight time crunch. By the time we get a preliminary AV in August, the final comes at the end of November, and here we are before you to certify the mill levy. And what this is certification of the mill levy for tax year 2017 to be collected in 2018. So let's look to slide number 3, the next one, our bar chart. And here we like to provide just a summary over the past couple of years in regards to Harrison School District. So as you can see, and while David is still here, as we look to the column 2018 and the gray section, the bond. In the prior year, we levied a mill of 8.0 for the payment of our debt. And as a result of the refunding, we're able to drop that to 7.574. So it's great that David's here, the direct correlation of refunding our bonds. And then again, our override, 8.8 mils, and then our general fund, I'm just going a little backwards, 16.6. And we have a next couple of slides that talk a little more to why the change. So slide number 4. Slide number 4 gives a year-over-year comparison. And I know Scott and myself, let's look at the net assessed valuation. As we got our AV finalization from the county, when you look at that net change to the far right, 74 million. Wow. Yeah, wow.
That's the biggest increase that we've had in a long time.
It is. That's over 10 to 12% when we were calculating the numbers increase over the prior year. And again, it's a direct result of the housing market, the economy. It's, I know Scott and I, wow, last year's comparison from the year before, it was only 9.9 million. So yeah, that's, big change. So that is a direct correlation to the change in the mill levies that we will assess to our community for next year. So just following through our middle column, our total levy that we will levy to our taxpayers, 33.118. And you can see that is down by 3 mills. And again, it's due to the high increase in assessed valuation. Next slide.
So let me interrupt you real quickly. So essentially, the effect of that is that people's tax bills will essentially be the same. The rate will go down, but their assessed valuation will go up.
Correct.
Yeah. Got it.
So our next slide, I think it's always good to have some comparable data. And here we're looking at school districts within the Colorado Springs area. And this data is reflective as of 2016, 2017. So any elections that passed in November, that would not, like D11, would not be reflected in here. So again, it's just kind of interesting to see what our neighbors are doing. If you look at Fountain, notice that Fountain does not have any, they have, I know, as Eileen's saying, they have no bonds. So it's interesting information to look at. I know Academy had an election, I think, what, a year ago? Yeah, so look at that in their information. So I think it's just some good business practice to see what our neighbors are doing.
Well, and Whitefield's passed this past election season.
It did. So theirs will also have a change.
Increase.
The next slide in another comparison, and again here just looking at districts in Colorado that might compare in pupil count size to us. And look to the far right, we have Montrose School District and Pueblo 70, and again they have no overrides. So it's just kind of interesting to look at, because as we know in Colorado, it's all about local control and what individual, districts do. Looking at Mapleton, Mapleton is over 7,000 students, a unique area right in the middle north of Denver, if I'm correct, David. Yeah. And really interesting, just look at, look at theirs, look at their bonded debt. And I know they have done, David would know more, I think, a couple of had success at the election and just in really renovating their campuses and buildings.
Is that a high growth area? Is there a lot of building, or is that a very old area that's
I'd say it's an older area, and I'm going to let David.
Yeah, that's an older established area of South Adams County, north and west of Commerce City a little bit. And they've had to do a complete sort of remodel of older buildings. It's not a real rapid growth district, but they did nearly $200 million in the last 3 or 4 years of fixing stuff that's old. Hadn't had an election for a long, long time. And they did a big BEST grant transaction as well.
Is that reflected in the gray?
Yeah, that's probably why the gray's so big, because it used to be that they had almost no debt outstanding, and then they've gotten a bunch within the last few years. But it's not been growth related. It's more been buildings that are just old and tired and needed to be redone, and the cost of new buildings is, as Mark could tell you, is significantly growing.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to slide number 7, how does this impact our taxpayers here in Harrison? If anyone's familiar with the Gallagher Amendment, that's a constitutional measure that was approved by voters back in 1982. And it was in a response to homeowners having concerns about their rising residential property taxes. And so the Gallagher Amendment says it requires that residential assessed values comprise no more than 45% of the state's assessed valuation. So what do we have that's a little bit different here? The first time since 2003, the assessment rate for residential property has changed from 7.96 to 7.20. So that's something also that affects. So the annual tax amount, $238, is what our mill on $100,000 will generate to the average taxpayer on a $100,000 home. A year ago, we looked at the data and that we reported to the board, and was $288. And again, thinking our assessment rate was a little bit higher, AV was a little bit different. So the information we also have before you, there's a resolution, and then I know a brief memo. So that is some high-level certifying the mill levy, and happy to any additional questions or thoughts.
You said the annual tax amount was about $50 less than last year. So what's the overall impact for the district?
As far as,
If the same homeowner is paying $50 less, and that's part of our 45%, how does that affect the total funding coming in?
oh, we're still, because of the increase in the assessed valuation, and that's back on, I'm going to have David hold the microphone.
So again, good news to our property owners that
Yes.
we could take a good message, and again, looking
Exactly.
at a bond, any good news that we can take them is
Exactly. Very good news.
it's good news before you ask for.
Exactly. And on slide, I have a little cotton mouth tonight. Back on slide 4, you can see the total levy, what that will generate in revenue. So we are still levying the same amount. We're levying a different mill, but we'll receive the same funding, if that makes sense.
I'm ready to make a motion here, but I'm just, the question of, I mean, that's the biggest increase in assessed valuation that I've seen in the district in the time that I've been here, and just wondering whether it's sustainable or not, over the long term. It's going to be a big question.
So keep in mind too, this has been a statewide phenomenon. All the districts throughout the state of Colorado have seen these kinds of numbers. And well, here's the part that's kind of a little frightening, is that we actually reduced the residential reassessment rate from 796 to 720. So you would have thought that if there would have been a year where it would have been slightly smaller, this would have been the year, because it took more residential to come up with the same amount. And it didn't happen. So, but it's also based on 18 months ago's property taxes or home values. So in theory, the next reassessment cycle will be this next January, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And the market's still going along pretty good here. So I would sort of expect that you might see this kind of continued little pace for a bit. And then the Gallagher adjustment of making residential a smaller percentage will then shift a little bit of the burden to all the other classes of property, the industrial, commercial.
It's going to make my head explode.
Sorry.
So we may have some discussion afterward, but I would move to certify to the Board of County Commissioners the following dollar amounts to be collected from local property taxes for the period January 1, 2017 to December 31, 2017, and collected by the county clerk in 2018 for the approved funds and mill levies necessary to generate the stated dollar amounts based on the current assessed valuations and the amounts as stated in the materials presented in the agenda.
It's been moved and seconded to certify the funds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
We've made it through everyone's favorite financial discussion. If Joyce was here, I would see her nodding off. The eyes would just glaze at that point. So She missed out on the Lex Financial. Yeah, she saw it coming. So moving on, 6.0, monitoring, review, and consent. OE5, learning, environment, and treatment of scholars.
All right, OE5.
Carla Loria, thank you.
Yes. How's everybody? OE5, this is actually the monitoring for one of the OEs for scholar development. And as you can see in the notes, we are on compliance with noted exceptions. Indicator 5.1 bullet 3 is not in compliance. And 5.3 bullet 2 is not in compliance. So as we go through, I will talk a little bit about those two when we get there. 5.1, we are in compliance in bullets 1 and 2. In a student survey, 86% of the students agree or strongly agree that their school sets a high bar for learning, or that they're expected to succeed academically. Bullet 2, 85% of the staff in the district climate survey agree or strongly agrees that the instructional learning environment leads to high student achievement. And bullet 3 is one of the bullets that we are not in compliance. In a review of 411 academic and behavioral plans, of which 259 were academic plans and 152 were behavioral plans, it is shown that 42.1% of the students show improved performance in their areas of concern, and 57.9% of the students did not show improved performance in their areas of concern. In this, we looked at several assessments. The Dibbles, Star Math, their grade in math and reading, and their GPA was used to do the analysis.
Are most of these in primary or secondary? Where do you?
They are both. 411 were actually included all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade. And so it was about half and half.
It's a targeted area. Does anybody have any idea what happened? I mean, if this was a focus of concern, then there should have been a lot of effort put into it, but those percentages are a little disappointing.
Right. So what we did is when we looked at the data, we looked at when the plan was done and then looked at the progress that they had before and after. So in conversation with the school leadership office, it's in curriculum and instruction, it's actually focusing now on how effective are those interventions or whatever they are, the schools are putting in place, and whatever is noted in those plans, our next step.
Okay, thank you.
What was the target in this area in the past? Has this been is this a blip? I mean, what has it shown in past years?
Last year, it was reported that 85% of the students had shown progress, and the target is 80.
Okay, and so this is a big change from past years.
This is the first time that we actually look at the data in the way that we are pulling the results, looking at the interventions.
Got it.
So next year, we will be able to compare apples and apples compared to this one. So this year is when we actually looked in conjunction with the school office and curriculum instruction RDA, looking at the tables, math and grades.
And if I may chime in there, I think the important piece to recognize and notice, this isn't necessarily highlighting that kids are not making progress. They're just not meeting the target. We go back to our expectation. We expect kids to have at least a year's worth of growth, regardless as to where they start. So if we were to actually identify our kid making progress, the answer would be yes. Are they making enough progress that we would expect them to make that year's growth? That's where the answer is no.
Did we set the standards too high this time?
Excuse me?
I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say no, that we didn't set the standard too high, because we do expect kids who are not at that level of performance as far as their grade level, we are expecting them to make faster paces of growth with regards to kids who are at grade level. So it may not necessarily come across as pretty on the report, but I think it's still important for us to hold that high expectation.
So would you ever say that the standard was too high?
Probably not.
I was just clarifying if that was a loaded question or not.
But it will be a conversation when we set the indicator for next year to know whether or not that's something that we want to talk about.
Yes. So a point that we can begin to highlight here is the growth, and then measure it, and then also highlight if kids are actually meeting the target or not, so that you could see the difference.
And the target was set based on growth.
Say that again.
The target was based on a percentage of growth, rather than if you're at second grade now, you're at third, we're looking at you making so much progress toward that. I'm forgetting the term.
Right. So and correct me if I'm incorrect, caller, but let's say for a second grader, we're expecting them to read 90 words a minute, but they're actually starting off reading 50 words a minute. They could have made growth to 60 words per minute, but they still didn't meet the target of 90 words per minute.
Right, I understand that. So it's based on median growth percentile.
I don't necessarily
No.
consider it median growth. Yeah, median growth percentile in that case. Yeah. Yeah.
We anticipate that there'll be improvements that'll be reflected in next year's report, because we put a couple things in place systemically. So our MTSS district-wide, so making sure that we have clear interventions in place at tier 1 through tier 3 levels. In addition, we purchased Star Reading, which is a universal screener for our 6th through 9th grade students. And then we just purchased Lexia 10th through 12th grade. So we're finally, I shouldn't say finally, but we're at a place where we can assess our students K through 12 going forward, so we can intervene early and often.
So earlier identification of how they're, okay, thank you.
5.2, we are in compliance. There was no violation of FERPA that was communicated to the district or reported. 5.3 is first bullet is in compliance. There were no incidents of an adult adversely affecting the well-being of a student in which the district did not take immediate action. And the second bullet, we are not in compliance as we did not meet the target. There's a comment there from Aspen. The bullet says, after random review of 200 student report cards and bodies of evidence and reviewing 20% of academic and behavioral RTI plans, or MTSS now plans, by scholar development, it is noted that there were 2 incidents where scholars were hindered from being in a supported environment. What we did is we looked at the report cards and we looked at the comments, making sure that if a student was failing in a grade, there were comments actually that would support the student to move forward, and that was the case. But there were 2 incidents in which there were comments that were deemed as not supportive for the student or to the student. There is a comment from Aspen in there that you can see.
And we've since rectified those 2 situations. So correcting it as we move forward. Yeah.
And this is in line with what we've talked about when we set these indicators. When you talk about 100%, you don't leave yourself, and you all have taken responsibility for that and owned that that's what you want to do, is set that at 100%. So it's important to note that we have had that conversation, and we've said, are you sure you don't want to set that in a place where you give yourself a little bit of wiggle? And the answer was, I don't recall specifically in this case, but in other cases, your response has been, nope, so keep that in mind for the next time around.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
Yeah, but it's hard to make something less than 100% in some cases. And what weren't they thinking?
Well, and we challenged it, and they said, no, it's important to be at 100%. So.
Yeah, but what isn't the staff person thinking to make that comment?
Yeah.
5.4, we are compliance in regards to not permitting unnecessary or irrelevant collection of student information. 5.5, we are in compliance with the one indicator regarding social promotion of students.
As secretary, I have one more comment. There's a formatting issue. Those X's aren't lining up on 5.4. It looks like one hasn't been identified at all.
Right.
But
We're actually
there's nothing there.
have had conversations of changing
This
the entire
X-
format to
This
make
X
it
is over here.
work, because you change one X and all the X's are, it's
hey,
like so.
I can't tell you I like the system. It's what we've got, but
Yes, but I agree with the X's. All right, any further questions?
I just wanted to note that there's a lot of
hold on.
There's a lot of acronyms, and I know we're monitoring and not indicating, but just a consideration for when we do go to indicating or something, because these will, after wet signatures get on there, these will be scanned in and made available for public view. And so if somebody from the public is viewing, they're not going to know what the acronym represent. Thank you.
We'll make the changes for the indicators.
Okay, any other comments about, overall, really very good. A couple of blips, and again, holding a high standard is fantastic. We make changes to capture every one of those. Certainly not looking at it to be punitive, but to move forward for the kids.
All right.
I'm sorry, just another, housekeeping observation. When you look at the first page of the OEs, you don't even know what it is other than by number. We might need to look at where we put the name. The name shows up, it's way down here before it says learning environment, and we might
But the
need to look
title.
at
The title.
starting by saying monitoring OE5 and then say what it is right on that first part of the page.
So what I'm going to do at this point is ask the board, because this is format that you guys have agreed. In our meeting in January, if you guys are interested in altering the format when we meet with ASPEN groups, that would be a great time to let me know at that point so that we can make the adjustments moving forward. Mm-hmm.
Another item for Linda to add to the agenda for the retreat.
Once the board makes a group decision on it, I'll be glad to follow through.
Moving on. Find my place.
OE12.
OE12.
That is me as well. All three are mine today, so. OE12. And this is also one of the operational expectations for scholar development. We are in compliance with noted exceptions. Indicator OE12.1, bullet 3 is not in compliance. Indicator OE12.3, bullet 4 is not in compliance. And 12.4, bullet 1 is not in compliance. And as we go through, I'll talk about those. OE 12.1, we're in compliance, bullet 1. with the survey. 86% of the students agree or strongly agreed that when rules are broken at my school, there are consequences. We are in compliance also in bullet 2 with 99 that the students receive appropriate consequences 99% of the time for disruptive behaviors that interfere with the learning environment as defined by student code of conduct. And this was actually some data that was pulled from all the referrals and in the system, and we looked at 740 samples, and we did the analysis on 740 samples of those referrals. Bullet 3, in a comparison between 15 and 16 and 16-17 school years, there was an increase in the number of referrals and a decrease in number of suspensions and expulsion. 2015-16, there were 7,169 referrals that resulted in 2,431 suspensions or expulsions. And the following year, 16-17, there were 7,605 referrals that resulted in 2,081 suspensions or expulsions. So the referrals increased 6%, but the suspensions decreased by 14%. So the expectations was that we were going to be making a decrease in both, but there was an increase in one and a decrease in the other one. So it shows us not in compliance. Last bullet, a review of campus classroom showed that 98% of the classroom, the students follow a behavior management system that is used in the classroom. This was also, this was confirmation from principals that they have a classroom system in every classroom, a behavioral management system in every classroom, and it is known by the students.
A quick question on the out of compliance one.
Mm-hmm.
There's more referrals. Is the implication that more kids are misbehaving, or have we changed how we're identifying the problems? Maybe identifying things quicker to make a difference?
If I can address that, with the referrals are at the teacher's discretion. So whatever the situation is, if a teacher deems that it is necessary for them to write a referral to have the kids sent to the office or wherever, they have the liberty to do that. The response or the consequence is then up to the discretion of the administrator.
So there's no standard to compare against?
We have a code of conduct. Teachers receive training on the code of conduct. I still wouldn't necessarily say we're standardized across the board. I, as a teacher, send a kid to the office for whatever, tapping on the table with a pencil. Another teacher across the hall would not do that.
Yeah, different levels of classroom management.
Yes.
.2, we are in compliance. The code of conduct was reviewed by district administrators in the year 16 and 17 school year, and it was determined that changes should be made to reflect a clear definition of the positive behavior intervention, the PBIS, and that was added to on page 8, which in some printers comes out at page 7, because I realized that, so just note that. And there was an update on the non-discrimination declaration that was made on page 4.
What's the highlighted yellow imply? I mean, my document has highlighted in yellow.
Some of the
changes from
for the
previous
indicators.
year's
those are
indicator.
yes, and comments from Aspen are also highlighted in yellow. So this is sent to the Aspen group, and any comment that they make, they will add the little comment, but will highlight the area that they are commenting on. 12.3. We are in compliance in bullets 1, 2, and 3, and these are all in regards to the student code of conduct and how they are disseminated to everybody, all students and community. But we are not in compliance on the last bullet, bullet number 4, in a survey conducted to May of 2017, 62% of the students and 78% of the staff indicated that students understand how students are expected to behave. The target was 70 for both groups, and we have one at 62.
And this is one that we know we have to do some adjustment in the way in which we are communicating this, because the indicator speaks to staff and students being informed of disciplinary or discipline expectations, but we actually measure, do they understand? What two different things. So we did it that way this time. However, we know that going back and monitoring that, we want to know, have you been informed of what the expectations are for you?
Right.
Are you aware of the expectations? Not necessarily your understanding of the expectation.
I mean, informing and understanding are two different things. Yeah, I told you. Do you understand? No, I don't.
Yeah. And it gets tricky just for that reason, because we could have a situation where we could educate and educate and educate and still have individuals say, well, I don't understand that. I don't understand that.
So I'm sure you have the answer to this, but do we have on 12.1 bullet 3 where we're out of compliance for the increase in referrals? Do we have data that's showing what teachers are writing those referrals, or did they just go in a big pile somewhere?
No, there's actually a data on each individual one, by teacher, by school, by.
And we're looking at that data to make sure that there's not a teacher versus student problem, and that our teachers are well versed in their training and how to deal with students appropriately.
That's a follow-up.
And the response to that, the answer is yes. Okay. Campuses are required to input the data into Infinite Campus. And so we're able to go into Infinite Campus and see when the incident has occurred, where the incident has occurred, and what has been the number of times for that particular situation. And we can do that down to the actual kid. That's when we then go back and have conversations with administrators. Well, if you look at Andre Spencer's class during second period, 30 kids are being sent to the office, versus if you look at Andre Spencer B's class, second period, no one is sent to the office. What are we doing to address that?
Right, and that would be the same question for the OE 12.3 with the 62% of students not understanding. Do we know if those students are from separate schools, or is that a joint number? And so I think, so my question always is like, are we getting at a root of a problem, or are we just noticing it? Are we noticing it all the way down to each individual school and classroom?
And yes, for the surveys, we can identify the campus that's giving this response. We don't necessarily drill it down to which kid, which class, because it's an anonymous survey in this particular case. But we can reference back to where referrals are coming from, which schools, which classrooms, and kind of make a correlation there.
When as you look at staff, you walk into classrooms and you see classroom management from a little more experienced teacher that just handles situations. They know that the classroom management's very different. So you may actually see new staff having a little bit more struggle with some, their result may be more referrals because they don't have that classroom management down quite like a more tenured teacher. So you could see a root.
Right. And that is looked by campus. Actually, this month, well, last month, we're just starting this one. We started having reviews, staff reviews with principals and curriculum and instruction. Wendy and Ms. Lance from the school office and myself, we meet with principals and we talk about every staff member, and there are conversations about any concerns with instruction or classroom management. There is systemic PD on classroom management that is offered through the school leadership office. So there's when there are conversations regarding Carla, we'll need to go here, and there's going to be somebody monitoring, and then we look at these patterns by classroom, by teacher, by school,
And so we're in the process actually of doing that. We do it twice a year.
So just to kind of loop back around to 12.3, bullet 4, when we reviewed the indicator, Dr. Spencer, you want to look at that from terms of their understanding, or do we look at changing that to?
For right now, I would say we would leave it. It would still be out of compliance. But in going back and looking at how we're going to measure it for next year, we do want to look at it from the standpoint
Review
of
when we
informed.
monitor that indicator. Okay.
Yes.
So it's challenging to identify if somebody understands.
Yes.
So the clarity of how do you indicate an understanding is obviously has to be a big part of that.
Right. Which is why the goal is for us to change it to inform and then monitor inform. Because the expectation is for the student conduct, teachers are expected to go over that code of conduct with kids. And administrators review the code of conduct with teachers. So that's where the informational piece comes into play.
So
Right.
a note for
Well, it's much easier to monitor being informed than it is to monitor understanding. I mean, how do you decide, I have these conversations with students all the time. Your patient understands. How did you know your patient understood? Just because they heard it doesn't mean it sunk in. And that becomes the challenge. Exactly.
I just had a question. So is that like all the way to high school too?
Yes, that's K through 12.
Oh, okay. I was just asking because I didn't know that. I didn't know how that. Okay. Just curious. All right. Never mind.
always a great observation from a scholar perspective. That's very good.
Well, in many cases, what most of the campuses do is during the social studies block or period, the social studies teacher does the review of the code of conduct. Not in all campuses, but in many campuses. Some campuses do it in a different way. But the expectation is that they do.
So my question for that is just like, for the kids that go, for the kids in pathways, our social studies teachers are like professors. I don't know if they fall in the same category as this, like if they have to go towards the same rules, but I've never been told the student, I didn't even know we had a code of conduct. I was like, I thought if you just got in trouble, you just got in trouble. I didn't know that there was like a thing. So for kids that are in programs like that and they don't have those classes, do we still get informed? And if so, how or where? Like that.
You guys, and this is where we'd have to go back to the high schools to communicate them with getting creative. Each of you have laptops. We can email you, which we have the code of conduct electronic, email you the code of conduct with an understanding that we're expecting you to read it and email us back that you have been informed about it. So there are ways in which we can get the information to you. We just have to make sure it's done.
Just a quick suggestion. I don't know if you guys are already doing that, but if you do, we have advisory on Fridays where they're required to have their computers out.
Yep.
And I think you can make posts on Infinite Campus, right? Like if you're a teacher or part of the district.
Yes.
I was just saying that maybe that would be a way, because they're bound to see it because it comes up as a notification. Something like that. Okay.
In some of those GT classes, though, the code of conduct is included in the syllabus.
Yep.
That's supposed to be signed by the parent and the student in GT pathways at the beginning of the year. And so a lot of times the students will just hand it to their parent and nobody reads it. We sign it because we assume you're really great kids and we know you're awesome. And no one reads through that. And occasionally on the syllabus, there is a code of conduct attached to it. Just note to self.
And it's also
So
shared.
read your syllabus, my friend.
I actually do read my syllabus because I try to get ahead and stuff. But then if that's the case, then I've definitely never seen it. Because I don't want to get my teachers in trouble. I really like my teachers.
You're not getting your teachers in trouble.
It's
So
also
don't
shared to
worry about that.
everybody
You're
that
not getting your
registers.
teachers in trouble.
But I haven't.
Oh, there she goes.
Oh.
All right. Well, moving to 12.4.
So just to comment, it's also in the agenda book that is given to every high school, to actually every student. And it's also in the registration forms that when new families come in, they are provided with that information. So yeah, every family has it. Except for one. All right, 12.4.
Oh, there it is. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's on the back.
Yeah, no, there's I know. Andre's like, I'm going back on vacation.
Okay, 12.4.
Oh, 12.4.
We are not in compliance on bullet 1. In a survey conducted prior to May 17, 56% of the staff responded that consequences are the same for all students who break a rule in accordance to the code of conduct. The target was 70%. And there was conversation about this in regards to the teacher's perception. But when just wanted to add that for the other indicator, there were 740 referrals that were compared. We looked at the infraction or violation because there are numbers and they're categorized that way, and also at the consequences to determine whether there were outliers or students receiving consequences that were completely different. And we were in compliance with that one. So this is definitely, perception.
And if I can respond to that as well, there are times where there are different consequences for the same infraction. That is at the discretion of the administrator. And the administrator will decide what will be the consequence that will be provided or given to that particular kid based on that situation or circumstance. Their administrators, I think, are doing a good job of attempting to communicate to teachers when there is a difference. Does it eliminate the fact that the teacher want Andre suspended? No, it does not eliminate that fact. But nonetheless, I think administrators are using, in most cases, administrators are using good judgment in deciding what will be the consequences based on the actual offense.
That's all I was going to follow up, but just ask that is this staff responding to consequences delivered by the administration, not themselves? If they were delivering the consequence and they're saying that they're not doing it equally, is that?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
If it was up to some staff, some classes would be empty, but nonetheless.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
Know everything. But this is a really hard one, and it's really about perception. I mean, you could flip this 1,000 different ways, depending on how the responder is going. So that might be just one to consider for future. Anyway, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are in compliance with bullets 2, 3, and 4, and for all of these cases, there were 740 referrals reviewed. For bullet 2. Suspensions and consequences shows that students receive similar consequences for the behaviors 94.5% of the time, and the target was 90%. Reviewing those referrals, we looked at the specific ones for classroom disruption. There were 411 of those, and in looking at the suspensions and or consequences, the students receive reasonable consequences based on the student code of conduct 98.8% of the time. And also looking at the office referrals, suspensions and consequences show that 100% of the expulsions are based on reasonable consequences as outlined in the code of conduct.
Any questions or comments? No? Well, they can move along to OE4.
That would be me.
Operational expectations. Again, Carla's up.
My birthday, I had this gift
Happy
today.
birthday.
I had to throw it there. I had to. All right. All right, OE4, and we're looking at indicators, not the monitoring here.
Correct, yes.
New board members just, you want to just.
Yeah, the distinction between monitoring, we're looking at the measurement of the indicators and evidence of compliance. When we review the indicators, they're actually looking at the form that we're going to be measuring those by the following year.
So we're
Does that setting the targets, setting those standards for the following year's measurement? Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah.
Right.
Linda should, but for Jeannie's benefit, probably. Yeah. Okay.
That when you open it up on the iPad, it's not gonna open right. I just want to say for the new board members, when you open it on your iPad, it's not gonna look the same way it will on like your laptop computer. You're not gonna get the comments from Aspen groups. So sometimes it's beneficial to download it before you come so you can see what else is on there.
So Carla, on this one, OE4, I don't think we made any adjustments to the indicators, but there is some feedback from Aspen Group. Am I correct?
Well, actually, there were both because there were some adjustments to the actually to the percentages that we were going to target. 4.3 was one of the ones that we that were adjusted because to bullet 1, 97%. You can see the percentages at the beginning in there. The targets before were 80% of all new teacher hires who advance on pay for performance would be rehired by principals. Because we've always greatly surpassed the targets, then the conversation that we had was that we were going to bring it, just bring it up a notch for us so that we can, work, because for the last few years it's been like an easy breeze, which is okay for us, but we also want to challenge ourselves. So we brought those percentages higher so that we continue pushing. I don't know, they always giggle about stuff, and that's why I don't like sitting next to them, because then I get distracted.
So
that's how I got
right.
in school as well when I
So
was a kid.
to your point, Carla, if we could, whatever the language was prior that we have adjusted, remember the strike through and then in red, whatever the new language is.
Right, and there's actually a hard copy because we noted that the Aspen Group did not have that. So just in preparation, we brought it.
So we can make sure we
printed.
fix that.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Right. That was my question. Right. Because in the one that Aspen sent, the strike throughs were not there. So and they had different kind of comments, but anyway.
Oh, and those did not translate onto the board doc
Correct.
copies.
Correct. So the comments are in one that actually have those changes, but not those strike throughs. So that was one of the changes that in discussion with the superintendent and cabinet we looked at. Another change was 4.8. Which is, it is page 5 of 8 in the printout.
So is the 85%, is that new, that those 3 lines, or are we just striking?
It is the 85% is new. The one that we're changing the language, because the way that it was written, it was really in a negative way, how many are leaving, but then it's how many are we keeping. So we just, to be consistent with all the document, because we look at the positive, in it, but that one was for some reason.
Just the converse. You're not changing.
Correct.
The percentage. Mm-hmm. Just looking at just the converse of it. Okay.
Correct.
And no other changes on?
No other changes. Those were the 2 changes. The comments from Aspen are the ones in the other document that if you do not have an iPad, you probably can see the comments there. And it was around for the 4.1, they made a comment for that last bullet for the superintendent's interpretation. The board's results policy is defined in R1. Their comment was, why only R1?
And our rationale for that is right now we don't have monitoring reports for R2 and 3. So that's why we have R1.
Another comment that they had was for 4.6 in regards to 100% of job descriptions will accurately reflect the job duties and essential functions for all the employees. And their comment is who judges whether the job descriptions are used and accurately reflect the actual work being done by the employee. But
so
by
if I can respond to that too, in our opinion, that gets into the process of it, who's going to be doing what and how we're going to do it, more so than what is the actual outcome, which is what you guys are monitoring, the outcome, not who's going to do it. Yes, 4.6, that one bullet.
And it's also recommended by OM. We work with OM they look at our job descriptions, and the recommendation from the group is that if it's specific to each individual, we'll have a job description for each person. So it needs to be broad enough to cover the job duties, but not the minute of their work. So by design, they are a little general in some areas, not specific, but directly linked to the job that they do.
Okay, were there other Aspen comments that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, for 4.8, the third bullet, a review of benefits package will be conducted, so on and so forth. They're pretty much saying that this is a process. We don't see it as a process. We see it as something that is important for us to monitor, to say that we're meeting that target or we're not. And the same comment was made for the last bullet. They're saying it's a process, but again, this is talking about compensation packets for positions. We believe that it's important to monitor if we're meeting that target or not. Yes.
And the last two comments they made was around 412, and it's basically the same, just highlighting that they see it as processes, which we don't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some subjectivity to Randy, especially process everything, unless there's a delineated number that he can attach to. And sometimes the measurement is doing it. So I think I don't have any disagreement with any of the changes. Does anybody on as far?
Voting on these tonight?
We
No, or do these go on consent for next time, or are we voting on these tonight?
They go on consent. Well, this is the meeting one. Yeah. So yes, you do.
Well, I would entertain a motion to accept OE4 with the changes that have been made.
Do we need to accept all of them? The 2 monitoring and the 1 indicator report?
Well, the monitoring will go on consent for next.
This is the only.
Or do we? Well,
Yeah.
This is the only meeting.
So
So let's do it in two separate. We'll accept.
Okay, I will make a motion to accept the monitoring reports for OE5 and OE12. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I would entertain a motion to accept the new monitoring or the new indicator report, OE4.
So moved.
second.
It's been moved by Ms. Gonzalez, seconded by Mrs. Pugh. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Okay, moving on. Thank you, Carla, for all of that. Item 7, monitoring board performance. Annual work plan. Has everyone had a chance to review the annual work plan?
Joyce.
Yes, absolutely. If there was a change. I have no additions or deletions. Any corrections?
I just want to highlight that next week is the board and cabinet Christmas party on the 14th.
Yes.
Has there, have we sent out invitations for that? I haven't seen format or. Maybe, please, that would be, I was thinking about that earlier tonight, that what format are we? Having it on the calendar and having like invitation for the, are we doing, you know, I know that
Last year I know there was discussion.
we've had some different, things. Do we want to do the same, do we want to do the white elephant? Is that or
I don't know.
the little,
We didn't
or
do it
no?
last year, but we did a board gift last year, but we haven't convened to decide.
We do have a board.
We do,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Do y'all like the white elephant? Do you like it?
We'll take a vote for it. We can still play a game or something.
Yeah.
I'm sort of ambivalent to it. I could take it or leave it. So the consensus from you guys would be.
That white elephant.
Yes, no? I think that was, unless anybody's, oh, you're saying no. Any other?
Am I hearing that there's already a gift figured out? Well, then I would say for now, we're good. And if next year you won't be here, if we want to do white elephant, it won't matter.
Okay, so since it was planned under Eileen's direction and she does not want a white elephant, we will not do there may still be some games of some sort. We'll probably have some funness, but no gift exchange. Any other changes to our annual work plan? No. Okay. Legislative updates.
Like my brain's already really.
I know.
So you have to excuse me if I get this totally wrong. So 171326 is now called transforming safety. So when everyone sees that out there, we're really trying to move away from everyone remembering a House bill number. So that's transforming safety. We're moving on that. We've chosen a nominating committee, which is local residents that are going to pick the local planning team. Local planning team is a group of residents and stakeholders. 25 will be chosen. We're having an application party on the 14th. We will choose, hopefully collect a whole bunch of applications. The nominating committee will choose those applicants, up to 25 residents, to define what Southeast is. That means what are the guidelines, what are the borders, what is the area we're working in, and then what those grants look like. Are those grants going to be going to people that are already doing work in Southeast? How much work? How many people are they touching? Are we looking at, there's just a whole array of things. So I've asked, and I think Dr. Spencer sent it out, for anyone that's interested in being on the local planning team to make sure they apply. There's no guarantee that you're chosen. The more applicants we have to pull from for those volunteering of those few weeks, the better outcome we will have. A stronger consensus by far. And so we're moving on that, and grants will be put out as of March, the first week of March. And so that's the goal. So we have a lot of like really diligent voluntary work to be done, which we've had a lot of community rally around. So our actual vote will go to City Council on the 12th. And as soon as they vote yes, I click a magic button, and on the evening of the 12th, everyone will receive their applications that I've spoken to. So that's really where we are.
Provided it passes.
It will pass. I'm not even gonna second guess that, because that would just make me fall over right now. It's 5:30 to 7:30 at the Sand Creek Library. I sent something.
I was just thinking,
Yeah.
because our
Yeah.
Christmas party is then. I don't know what's the time for the Christmas party? Do we know?
No.
We
So
may or may not see you.
I know, I'm sorry. That's what pays the bills, unfortunately. So I think that's all I have. If you guys have really in-depth questions, please email me. I'm hoping to have my HSD2 email set up soon, which would be easier, but I think most of you have my email anyways. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to go back to the work plan real quick. On the work plan, it says we are indicating OE4 results accreditation rate and results access, but we didn't do that tonight and we're not doing that. Should that be reflected on the work plan or should it be moved or right here for underneath December, what we're monitoring and what we're indicating? So you see it says OE4 personnel administration, so we just did that. And then it says results accreditation rate, results access. But if we're not doing that, shouldn't that be moved? Yes. Or that'll get updated? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, because that's the change in our results plan. Yeah.
Where are we moving it to?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Linda's question is where are we going to move it to? And we have yet to receive a proposal on when we're getting that results. Combined results report.
They're not doing reports on it anymore. They're just getting an update on it.
Yeah, it's just gonna be updated. And we didn't get one tonight, although we had it there, so I wanted to make sure that that's.
So we'll add it to.
Thank you, Senia. No further legislative updates. Is that a harbinger of our new legislative liaison, kind of? Are you feeling that role, sort of? Didn't even know there was such a thing. No, well, I'll just leave it at that. I'll let it hang out there. New item number 8. Superintendent's consent agenda.
There's no financial statement attached. Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, our monthly financial statements are the second meeting of the month at the regular board meeting due to the timing of our fiscal month close. So we'll be happy. We'll get caught up in January. Thank you.
So
our personnel report, do we have any, is there any discussion about?
I've reviewed it. I don't have any questions.
Anybody, any questions about the?
So
I don't either.
I would move to approve the superintendent's consent agenda as stated. I would move to approve the superintendent's consent agenda items as stated.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Do we have to change something since there was no financial statement?
Oh. Probably.
I mean, before we can approve this, we got to take that one off. Who wants to say?
I'll make the motion. I will move to approve the superintendent's consent agenda, including 8.2, the personnel report, and not including 8.1 financial statement.
That motion on the table. With that motion on the table, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. With no board consent agenda, item 9, minutes. Once again, there's no Joyce.
I know. But she's still
So vicarious.
yeah,
yes.
her her impact continues.
Were there any changes to the minutes? Had been okay.
I have a comment that sort of fits here, maybe if anywhere, regarding the ATU. As I got clarification, and you guys please tell me if I'm misinterpreting. The ATU is in effect. The board is still considering what might be needed to be done regarding process, or the committee, and we're looking at our policy, but the ATU is in effect. Is that the correct situation?
The increase, the salary increase adjustment of the 1% is in effect. Yes, that is correct.
Was the only area of contention. Wasn't that the only area of contention?
That is correct.
Okay, so in all practical purposes, the ATU is in effect, and the board wants to consider looking at how we might better things for staff, but that's not affecting the currently completed ATU.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It answers my question, but if you go to the district website and you go to board docs, there's a statement under there that it is not in effect. That will have to be changed. Because I tried to go to board docs the wrong way last night. It didn't work. And there's this clear statement in there that the old ATU is in place, but I'm just now hearing that that's not the case.
Okay.
So as it relates to the board consent agenda, I would move to approve the board consent agenda, including the minutes as stated.
Right.
It's been moved by Ms. Gonzalez, seconded by Ms. Roscoe. Is there any other discussion or questions?
I will abstain from voting since I was not part of those meetings.
So will Mrs. Orozco. But we still have a
So we
quorum.
still have a quorum.
Yep.
3. With the motion on the table, I would call for a vote. All those in favor of the board consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
With 2 abstaining, yes.
With 2 abstaining.
Just before we adjourn, Mr. President, let me ask a real quick question. We need to get some consensus. We had some conversations about this at our last retreat relating to the upcoming December days off, the 2 days in December. Had a conversation with the superintendent about kind of the history on that and how that came to pass. We will not have time to kind of review and vote and kind of really take an assessment. So I would just look for some consensus among you all in terms of support for those 2 days, and then ask the chief of staff, Ms. O'Brien, to send out the same email that you've sent out in past years, granting those days. And then we need to have a conversation in July about kind of future years and how we handle that. But just in terms of the expectation for this year, that's what I would recommend.
I would agree. Part of where that stemmed from was the Aspen retreat. They had said that that's really an operational issue, that the superintendent should make that decision and the board should not meddle in that. Although the board, I guess, felt like we wanted to, from the board, reward the staff. So that's where the discussion will go to.
I think the first time it happened, it was driven by the board. And apparently that has continued since. But
And it
initially,
has.
I think
We've all actually all given a head nod to that. But the discussion will be, do we put that onto the superintendent's plate, or do we continue to approve and give the head nod
We just don't have time
for those?
thorough
So
conversation about it until January.
correct.
So do we take a vote right now to say yeah, or we don't need to do that?
I think probably in future years we'll want to figure out either a vote or not the board's business. But for this year, I'm willing to just kind of deal with it like we have dealt with it in past years and just give kind of an indication that it has the board's support.
Would there be any contention? Does anyone have any objection to?
I do not have any objection.
Board, does anybody have any? I don't.
Revisiting in future years. Yeah, but right now. Yeah.
Right now, no.
Just very quickly, as Eileen said, she would still be invested in the district. If those of you have been around long enough to know Bill Zalman, former president of the district, he says he's still vested in Hello.
Oh, that's nice.
Bill's great. I've had some conversations with him about some traveling and sports things of the past. That's very amazing. And I'll leave those at. So if there's no other business, anyone?
Mr. President, I do. Just clarity purposes around the ATU. The 1% is in effect. The online component, we have not posted the ATU online because the board has not taken action on it at this moment.
I was told they did, so I don't know.
Yeah, the action we took was to not accept it. That was the only action.
So we need to, so essentially, Mrs. Pugh's point is that we need to have some, staff needs some clarity about what the status of the ATU is. And I think the status right now is because the board has not accepted the new one, that the previous one is in effect, except for the provision that has been implemented in terms of the 1% increase, which is not a fantastic answer, because it's not either one.
Did anything else change?
No.
No.
So for practical purposes, the current ATU is in effect, regardless of the term.
So do we want to say that?
It's more hybrid, actually, right? Because
The only change was a 1% increase, which has occurred.
Yep.
But the board said no, and it's occurred, it's in effect. I don't know how else you want to say it.
I think we need to have a January, maybe some discussion among ourselves and then look at the January agenda to see if we need to add
Yes.
an item for January that we need to take action on.
Or we can kind of have some more conversation.
Some discussion about it after the Aspen retreat to see if we need to take action.
Yeah.
Does that answer your, or maybe not?
Not really.
It's you said no, but it happened. So it's a different problem, I think, than it appears to me the ATU is in effect. The question may be, how did a no happen and it go into effect at the same time? That is a board issue that we have to figure out. At this point, my observation is the current ATU is in effect. The only change that occurred is the 1% that has taken effect. The ATU is in effect. The board needs to look at how we better process to keep some confusion between, oh, we don't think so, but oh, it's already being done or whatever. I wasn't there. I don't know. At this point, I think it's in effect, and the board needs to look at how we deal with that. Did we, is there something, I've heard conversations about timing of things, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, but that's, to me, is a board issue, not anything else.
Whose month is January to review? Jasenia, that's your agenda. So we'll have discussion at the January Aspen retreat and decide what we'll need to do for that.
Correct.
Whether we add something to the January agenda to make it an action item or not.
Fantastic.
Satisfied? Any other business? With that, we're adjourned.